Welcome to Public Health in Real Life. I'm Ashwin Kadambi. I'm absolutely delighted about today's special program marking the celebration of World Water Day 2021. With us today is a team of experts from International Medical Corps, my full-time workplace. These experts specialize in water, sanitation, and hygiene, commonly called as WASH, which is an indispensable sector within global public health. In fact, public health and epidemiology began with WASH. In the 19th century, John Snow, an English physician, identified that a polluted water pump as the source of an 1854 cholera outbreak in London. The focus of today's discussion will be on this year's UNWater theme, Valuing Water. We will learn about how access to water plays a fundamental role in public health programs' success, how safe and quality wash positively affects social determinants of health, who are the people behind the sanitation workers, their rights and dignity, how has WASH played a central role in preventing epidemics from becoming pandemics, and more. It is just a reminder to our viewers that everyone speaking here today is speaking on their own behalf rather than on behalf of their organization. I welcome our panel of experts, and with no further ado, I turn to our panel and request you to start the show by introducing yourself. Over to you, Dr. Sharma.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Sunita Sharma. I'm working for International Medical Corps in its Sudan mission. As Ashwin has highlighted the importance of WAS, I'm also one of the WAS practitioners. Thank you.
We'll go to Mohammed Garba.
Hello and welcome to our session. My name is Mohammed Garba. I work with International Medical Corps in Nigeria. I welcome you to this session, and I hope we'll have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Welcome, Mohammed. George. George, I think you're speaking on mute.
Thank you, panelists. My name is George Omara. I work with International Medical Corps, Yemen program as a WASH coordinator.
Welcome, George. Over to you, Scott.
Hello, everybody. My name is Theodore Scott, and I work with International Medical Corps as a roving WASH and health facility specialist. Prior to International Medical Corps, I've worked with several other organizations, including World Vision, International Rescue Committee, MSF, and you name the rest. And I'm happy to be with you today as one of the panelists. Thank you.
Welcome, Scott. And last but not the least, Yasir.
Thank you, Ashwin. My name is Syed Yasir Ahmed. I'm the Global WASH Lead for International Medical Corps. Have over 20 years experience for WASH as a practitioner and a promoter. Happy to be on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. To start off the program, I would like to turn to Dr. Sharma. Dr. Sharma, could you help our audience understand what is WASH and its importance on this World Water Day?
Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you so much organizing this beautiful event, this discussion. Let me start with the term WAS. The term itself is water sanitation and hygiene promotion. All these three components is giving as a sector called WAS. So within the WAS, there are other sub-sectors. They are water supply, excreta disposal, drainage and vector control, solid waste management, hygiene promotion, and WAS in disease outbreak and healthcare settings. As you also know, we are celebrating World Water Day. It is tomorrow, 22nd of the March. So why we are celebrating this day, which is the Water Day, one of the key components of WAS sector. So as you know, the safe water, sanitation, and hygiene are fundamentals to the human health. That is why United Nations General Assembly recognized water, sanitation, and hygiene as a human right, as a component of one of the human rights. So to achieve this human right component, since 1993, this day has been celebrated as an occasion to talk about the water crisis, to talk about the right of the people towards water sanitation, and ultimately to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal 2030. However, there are 17 total goals, and this water sanitation and hygiene for all is the goal 6, which cross-cuts all the Sustainable Development Goal. So this has a pertinent importance. Water has a pertinent importance to other sustainable goal. That is why we are celebrating the World Water Day tomorrow, 22nd March, every year. So this year, the theme for World Water Day is valuing water. The value of water is not about much just for the price. It is more than that. Value is explicitly recognizing the crucial role of healthy life and ecosystem. Let me take you through how it is contributing to other sustainable goals. That is the goal of United Nations goal of all of us for the healthy life and dignified life by 2030. So there are other sustainable development goals, such as reducing poverty. There are multiple factors that water contribute in reducing poverty. I will not go to the detail, and then I will just go through all the sustainable development goal. That is, these goals are linked with WAS, water sanitation. Whether it is fighting with hunger, it is maintaining the well-being and maintaining the healthy life, like working in a hospital or elsewhere, or improving gender equality, or any growth, industrial growth, urbanization, and all the remaining goals for Sustainable Development Goal 2030 are linked with water. Without water, we cannot imagine these goals will be achieved. So our main aim of the today's discussion is to discuss about the importance of water, valuing of water in line with the Sustainable Development Goal, and also we link with water, sanitation, and hygiene, and how they contribute to the overall public health public health spectrum. So there are certain facts I would like to share with you regarding water, why water is so important. As we know, water has enormous and complex value for our existence. We cannot imagine, for example, we wake up in the morning, we first go to the toilet with water. We wash our hand, we need water. We make our breakfast or we make our tea. For every other thing, we need water. So there are a number of things that we can here share why water is so important. Sufficient amount of safe water is important for public health, whether it is for drinking, domestic use, food production, or
Sunita, as you're talking from Sudan, can I suggest you turn off your video?
Thank you for that, Sunita.
So, who are solely analyzed, they are without access to clean water. This means
But I think, Scott, could you expand on? So far, we have learned that water plays a fundamental role. It contributes to livelihood, school attendance, and dignity, and helps to create resilient communities living in healthy environments. More importantly, as Sunita has touched upon, WASH is a prerequisite to health. Can you expand on WASH's role in global public health?
Thank you, Ashwin. Water plays a fundamental role in global public health. And for instance, at the health facility, we need water for curative and preventive purposes. And once there is an outbreak, like the world have experienced several outbreaks, including the outbreak of cholera, water plays a fundamental role in responding to cholera and in responding to Ebola outbreaks. Water, like I said, is needed to provide quality care for the patients, as well as ensuring that primary healthcare commitments are met around the world. And within the healthcare facility, water is needed for curative interventions. Water is also needed for preventive interventions, and water is needed for the dignity of the patients, as well as for the safety of the staff that work within that health facility, and the safety of caregivers and visitors. Like during the past years, approximately so many number of persons died from cholera around the world. Like for instance, the cholera outbreak in Haiti of 2010 that claimed a lot of lives in that part of the Caribbean. And so water played a fundamental role in responding to that cholera outbreak. And for the purpose of understanding, cholera is a disease that is caused by fecal-oral transmission by of the virus, the Vibrio bacterium Vibrio cholera. Cholera has different strains, and whatever the strain is, the response mechanism and preparedness mechanism are the same. But the main reservoir of the cholera bacteria are humans. So both asthmatic patients, that the people who have the virus but are not showing symptoms, and patients who also have the virus share a huge quantity of the bacteria in their feces and in vomit. And about 80% of those who are infected do not get ill immediately, but still share the bacteria through their feces and through their vomits. So among those who develop symptoms, approximately 80% of them have mild to moderate symptoms, and 20% develop acute watery diarrhea with severe dehydration. So cholera then is spread from person to person transmission, and is the most common vehicle of infection through direct contact with dirty hands or lack of hand washing. Now, the two main objectives of a cholera response program will be to reduce the death rate and well as prevent the spread of the disease. So one activity that leads to preventing the spread of the disease is to set up cholera treatment centers and cholera treatment units. And the essence of setting up the cholera treatment center is to isolate patients and have them treated for the bacteria. As per World Health Organization standards, each health facility has specific water requirement. And in this case of a cholera response, each patient should be given 60 liters of water per patient per day for the cholera response. That water is only needed for the patient. There are other water requirements for the staff, for visitors, and for for caregivers who are at the cholera treatment center. Now, when it comes to Ebola, Ebola is a viral hemorrhagic fever that was identified in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the mid-70s. And it is easily spread from human to human and from animals to humans as well. Ebola can spread if we don't practice sufficient hand hygiene. Now, this disease, as per World Health Organization standards, the Ebola treatment center, just like cholera, cholera prevention is done by constructing treatment centers. The objective of our Ebola response also is to prevent the spread of the virus. And to prevent the spread of the Ebola virus, we have to construct Ebola treatment centers. By that, patients who come down with symptoms of the Ebola virus can be quarantined, can be treated. And for the water to do a successful treatment in an Ebola treatment center, we need approximately 300 to 400 liters of water per patient per day. Now, so you can see the differences in the quantity of water needed for a cholera treatment center and an Ebola treatment center. One may ask, why do we need that much water in the Ebola treatment center as opposed to the cholera treatment center? The response is just simple. The procedures for infection prevention and control at the cholera treatment center is completely different from the procedures at the Ebola treatment center. And the personal protective equipment used at the Ebola treatment center is also completely different from those that are used in the Ebola treatment center. For instance, in the Ebola treatment center, before you can access the red zone, you must be fully done in your personal protective gear, starting from the scrubs, the gun boots, the TVEC, and all of these gears that you must put on before having access to the patient for your own safety and protection. Now, to remove these gears require the use of a lot of water because we must have concentration of different chlorine strength at the ETC to be able to respond to the virus. Now, on top of that, you also need the water for the dignity of the patient. In most instances, when people have come down with the Ebola virus, there are so many diarrhea, there are vomits and other things that need to be cleaned. And for the dignity of the patient and the safety of the staff, we need that quantity of water, and we must constantly clean the wash infrastructures. We should also constantly do laundry so that we have staff going into the high risk zone. We have access to scrubs, we have access to reusable PPEs, which include the scrubs, the gun boots, the gloves, and other the items that can be reused. So based upon these factors, the World Health Organization recommends 60 liters of water per patient per day at the cholera treatment center and 300 to 400 liters of water per patient per day at the Ebola treatment center. So in the absence of water, both at the Ebola treatment center and at the cholera treatment center, there's no way we can prepare disinfectant solution, which we refer to as chlorine, to do cleaning, to do environmental cleaning, to do disinfection, to do a lot of other things within the Ebola treatment center and within the cholera treatment center. So this is how water is fundamental to the public health sector and public health responses. Even in the normal hospital setting, there are quantity of water required for patient care, for staff, for visitors, and in the absence of water, we cannot carry on public health services because we will put the safety of the staff at risk and the safety of the communities at risk because we will not be able to practice perfect infection prevention and control within that health facility. Over. Ashwin.
Thank you so much for that information, Scott. We just are able to recognize how central and fundamental is WASH towards infection prevention. Yeah, we'll get George
maybe
in just a moment.
Before we proceed to the next question or the next thing, I would just an input to what my colleagues has put forward. I think they have elaborately explained the
George, you can
benefit
just
or the
share your camera, or you can come up on the webcam.
yeah. So
Maybe.
I just wanted to add in relation to this year's theme, the value of water. So I think my colleagues have explained quite adequately the benefit of water in terms of health. So I also want to look at the value of water in terms of, for example, let's look at the value of water in that is the ecosystem. All our water system come from ecosystem. Before even it is delivered to the health facility or delivered to the community for them to access, it generates or it originates from the ecosystem. And therefore, for us to have water, that means we must value the ecosystem. We must protect the environment and the ecosystem where our water, which acts as a source of water supply. So we look at it in 2 or 3 aspects. So we look at underground water resources. So all our water resources comes through the ecosystem, and that means more focus has to be put on protecting the ecosystem, where actually water that is delivered to the community or to the health facility or to wherever it is delivered come from need to be adequately protected. And in situations where this is not protected, then the quality and the quantity of water supplied is affected, and hence it reinforces the need for this year's theme, the value for water. Secondly, I would also look at the infrastructure, because before water is delivered into the community or transmitted into the treatment plant, there are infrastructures that needs to be put in place. And in situation where this infrastructure are not in place, then water, safe and adequate water cannot be delivered even to the health facility. So that stresses the need for protection of the wash infrastructure, which include the transmission pipes, looks at the treatment plant, look at the supply line, so some distribution line. So some of these infrastructures need to be adequately protected to ensure that water is delivered to the right place at the right time. So those are the key things that I wanted to add onto what my colleagues has put forward.
Thank you for that, George. Thank you so much for that, George. Absolutely. I truly appreciate Scott's explanation about how WASH is critical for infection prevention and control, and also for dignity of patient or healthcare worker safety. And thanks for touching all those areas, and also about protecting the ecosystem and water infrastructure, how critical that is for a successful public health program. Thanks for that, George. George, I would like you to expand on WASH's role in other sectors of global public health, namely nutrition, food insecurity, gender-based violence. Over to you. George? George, if you could expand on water's role in other sectors of public health.
So thank you very much, moderator. So basically, when you look at value, so we are looking at water in relations to other sectors. So water plays a key role in almost every sector, but I will pick a key sectors. One of the key sectors, like my colleagues has explained, is health. We need water in terms of water supply to be supplied into, for example, medical or health staff need water to be flowing into the health facility in order for them to facilitate clean hygiene or hand hygiene as they provide health services to the patient, to the patients in the health facility. And so that is one area that water supply or wash is linked to health. In another area that wash is very important in health is that we need water supply, constant water supply to practice hand hygiene. I would give an example is this last year when we have a pandemic. That's when we realized that the importance of water in responding to pandemic. We needed water in the absence of personal protective equipment. We need actually water as a second option to protect us from the spread of the virus. And therefore, we need water flowing for hand washing. We need water for drinking. We need water for almost each and everything as far as health is concerned. Then secondly, water plays a critical role in food security. Like I said, all water originates from the ecosystem. And we know the food cycle, food is produced through farming. And in situations where we don't have water supply or there are no rains, so that means the food supply will definitely be affected. So once this supply is affected, then we are prone to food insecurity. And once food insecurity is in place, then we know that there's already a problem. Malnutrition will crop in because people are not able to eat adequate and balanced diet because the supply has already been affected. We need water in almost all aspects. Then we also water cuts across all genders, because when you look at water in terms of women and girls who are under reproductive age, we find that most of our girls actually drops out of school because of lack of safe water and sanitation facilities in school, because they in periods when they are practicing when they are experiencing menstruation, they need adequate supply of water, adequate and safe sanitation facilities where they can go in and be able to change their pads and all this. And this require constant supply of water. Then secondly, they also so you can see that water is linked to education, because once there are no wash facilities in the school, then the children or the girl child would miss school until such a time that she feels safe to come back to school. And you can imagine the effect of a girl child missing school between 3 to 5 days a month. And if you have a school calendar of 3 months, then you're going to miss a school for 15 days out of the 45 or so 90 days. So you can see the impact to a girl child in a situation where the school does not have access to adequate water supply system, sanitation facility, and even hygiene material. Because even this particular sex requires special attention in terms of hygiene material. So when these materials are not adequately available, then they will not be able to practice safe hygiene. Then in situations where they use reusable material, we require water supply to be constant so that they're able to wash this material and reuse it, because they're unable to afford reusable pads which are much more expensive. So that is how the value of water to other sectors is highlighted.
Thank you, George, for walking us through the commitment to the water in nutrition and in schools. That is a very important aspect of ensuring that we have enough water or wash access at nutrition plus the school. I'm going to go a bit more towards the next question, and I'm going to pose it to Muhammad. It's going to be talking about who are the real people affected. Over to you, Muhammad.
Thank you, Yasir. Who are people affected by lack of water. I can say globally everybody is affected by lack of water, because it is ideal and everybody is aware that we need water for basic survival. We need water for all the major activities, which include our economic, include culture, have to do with education, in healthcare system, and at the same time agriculture. So when it comes to who is affected globally, everybody is affected by the impact of water shortage. Just to pinpoint some key pointers, as we plan to celebrate World Water Day tomorrow, I am urging on the policymakers to take decisive actions in providing water, because 3 components need to be in place for people to have access to clean, potable water for drinking and other uses. And that has to do with enabling environment. The second aspect has to do with a provision of hardware. And the third component, which has to be and access to hygiene promotion education. These 3 components cannot be put in place without the strong advocacy of the policymakers. The policymakers consist of the government prestataries, local government bodies, and you come down to the middle part, which consists of the partners like the INGOs, the NGOs, and the other implementers in WASH. Then you link it up with the community for effective sustainability of the WASH delivery system. In terms of neglect, many communities have been neglected with lack of access to potable water. Just to give you an example, like Mahamashan community in Yemen, and we have Hazara community in Afghanistan, top it up with the lower caste in India, and to add up with communities like Ran in northern Nigeria. These communities have completely been neglected with provision of water supply, which poses a lot of stress on the people living in those communities. How do we foster and ensure that people build resilience to having access to potable water for them? Because we know 88% of mortality globally is related to water-related diseases, issues like cholera, issues like typhoid, issues like hepatitis, which we discussed. And with the current pandemic globally affecting everybody now has to do with COVID-19. Everybody is aware that now the many key preventive measures for preventing the spread of COVID-19 has to do with hand washing at regular time. How many people have adequate access to the spare standard of 7.5 to 15 liters of water for daily use? Many do not have. Most people affected are those people living in third world country who are affected by natural disasters or being displaced due to armed conflict. We have to put a machineries in place to ensure that people have dignified ways of having water. As we celebrate this event tomorrow, which is valuing water, how do we add value to water for everybody to have access? We know that by 2040, 1 out of 5 children will be stressed just in the way of accessing water for drinking, which is very scary. I think it's a time to put a call to everybody to have a decisive policy in terms of providing potable and drinking water for all. Thank you as well.
Thank you, Mohammed, for walking us. And we have often seen that the neglected communities are often, and majority, they are denied the access. I can quote an example from one of the missions while I was working in Yemen, where we were working with Mahamashin communities, and they were put together on a mountain top. And the landowners were not allowing us to do any sanitation facilities. So we had to drill kind of like sanitation facilities or pits in the mountains for them so that they can have access to adequate water and sanitation. And same time, I think you have nailed it rightly by saying that we all are affected if we don't have access to water, and the key components affects us and sustainability. That would take me to my next question, which is going to be for
Scott.
Yeah. How has the pandemic affected the WASH sector globally? Over to you, George. Over to you, Scott.
Josh, you want to go first? Hello? Okay.
You can go, Scott.
All right. Repeat the question so that I can pick it from there.
Okay, good. So the COVID-19 pandemic has affected access and has created difficulties for consumers significantly, and has created more difficult situation for water consumers at the both urban, very urban and rural levels. So water suppliers have had major financial challenges, and operational challenges have also been faced by water suppliers due to the pandemic. And smaller pipe water system supply are also have been susceptible to system disruption as a result of the pandemic, particularly in the context where there have been suspension of tariffs, suspension of bills, suspension of people having to pay their bills because the companies cannot request people to pay bills because of the pandemic as a result of people not having access to cash as well. Now, in the rural context, the delivery of water and the maintenance of hand pumps from the economic burden standpoint also have created system failure as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we can see that in the next 6 to 18 months, if we don't recover from this pandemic, the restrictions will lack. And water shortages, to have quality water, there must be chemicals like chlorine used to ensure that the water is disinfected and reach minimal acceptable quality. Now, there have been shortages of chlorine and other disinfectant materials that are being used for the purification of the water. So you can see that hand hygiene, hand washing is consistent with this virus because people should have access to safe drinking water, quality water, so that they can wash their hands. But the outbreak of COVID-19 has projected a slow down investment in the water sector worldwide. It has also increased the importance of operational reliability due to the cost of the disruption that have been caused by the pandemic. Now, this operational cost needs to derive from the shift in the demand patterns to the supply disruptions and the various emergency measures that are being employed by government to cope with the pandemic. For instance, during the pandemic, there have been series of lockdowns. And so in some countries, people who work in water facilities have been considered essential staff, but yet the issue of social distancing has to be respected at the workspace, which means all of the essential staff will not be allowed into the same space at the same time because they have to respect the rules of social distancing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the world's poorest received this virus, this outbreak, with a sort of shock on top of the existing major urban water and sanitation services deficits that people have been faced with over the period. So you can see that low access, reliability, and the quality of water and sanitation services present a serious risk in developing countries. For instance, large cities also have risks stemming from population growth, stemming from population density, and from informal settlements. So this pandemic has created a kind of situation on the access to water in this congested community. A recent World Bank tool that was used for identifying hotspots as a result of the pandemic pointed to the fact that people living in cramped conditions in cities and who have access to inadequate public services, especially inadequate waste management and sanitation, as significant sources of risk to contamination in large developing market cities such as Cairo, such cities like Mumbai in Kenya, where you have this congestion of people. So you can see that despite the pandemic is, we have this pandemic to deal with. People live in congestion. They have access to limited quantity of water, but yet we have to practice hand hygiene. We have to practice social distancing. And for instance, in the Bahamas was being hit by Hurricane Dorian in 2019. That hurricane disrupted most of the water infrastructure. So people depended on water trucking that were being delivered by NGOs within the hurricane, the areas that were affected by the hurricane. Now with government restrictions on lockdown, people could not access the quantity of water that they needed. So the outbreak limited access to water at household level in that situation, just to give you a life situation that we observe as a result of the pandemic. And I will stop here and turn over to Josh if he has something to add.
Hi, Scott. Can I ask you a question that as we were responding to the Bahamas, we had higher salinity rates in the water. So can you walk us in a couple of minutes that how did you actually met the people's need for water?
Thank you, Yasir. Like you put it rightly, the salinity rate in the Bahamas, especially in the Freeport area, is very high. So organizations that were involved into water distribution had to bring in a lot of equipment and reverse osmosis to do this and go through the entire desalination process, chlorinate the water, test the quality, make sure that the water quality meets minimum WHO standard in terms of free residual chlorine prior to the distribution. So once the water was being desalinated, it was treated and taken to the site. The check for free residual chlorine was being done both at the source and at the point of delivery. So that's how the water distribution process was being done at the time in the Bahamas.
Thank you, Scott. Over to you, George, to add further to what Scott has just mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yasir. So I think I'm just going to add the additional point to my colleagues who has highlighted how the pandemic has affected wash sector during this period. So like he has said, I will first look at the supply chain. So when you look at the supply chain, most of the water supply, equipment, materials are manufactured, and some of them come from overseas, especially in developing countries. With a country like Yemen, where I work, we rely on supplies that come from outside. So during the pandemic, because of the restriction in movement globally, this has affected supply of material that should have been used to develop the water supply system. I will give you an example, a situation where I was doing a rehabilitation of a water supply system in Yemen, and we had specified a use of solar system. So by the time the contractor gets contracts to start doing the rehabilitation, the supply, the market was almost empty because there was no supply coming in. So that affected our program that should have been used to increase supply of water. So that is how the pandemic has actually affected the wash sector. Then the other areas you can see that are still in the supply chain because of lack of movement of goods and services. Fuel become an issue. Most of the water infrastructure uses fuel. And in most cases, most of our water supply systems are located in the rural areas, which do not have electricity or the national grid that should supply power to those pumps. So we rely on using generators and maybe in most cases, solar system. So when the supply was cut off, that means the available fuel in the country was used up. So that means we could not supply fuel into the water supply system in order to supply water to the community. So you can see, and it will reach a time when people were lining up to queue for fuel to get water to pump water. So that is how much the pandemic has affected the supply chain of material that support water sector. The other area that I think pandemic has affected us badly in the water sector, especially in the humanitarian setting, is that in most countries where we work in countries where human resource is quite low. So there is always movement of expatriates to go and support WASH program in countries where there are conflicts or there is a response that are taking place. So in most cases, we were not able to push our staff, expatriate staff, WASH technical staff to support the local staff on ground to make sure that we are supplying water to those conflict affected population. So this was very difficult for us to move international staff to go and support our program in various countries where the staff were needed. So this has affected the WASH sector badly as a result of the pandemic. So the other areas that I would look at is even locally, when the pandemic came in, we have national staff who are also have, because of the restriction from movement from one location to another, because of the fear that the spread of the virus will be immense. So we could not even move our staff from one governor to another one, or even from village to village. An example, we have a WASH program in the community where we are doing hygiene promotion, sensitizing the community on the best practice. But we could not do that because we were breaking the SOP, which is the social distancing. Then, so this is how pandemic affected the WASH sector during this period. So over back to you. Those are the few points that I wanted to add to Michael on top of what my colleagues had presented.
Thank you. Thank you, George, for walking us during the key aspects of how WASH has been affected by the current pandemic and how are the key aspects that we are considering right now. I'm going to pose my next question to Sunita about climate change and how WASH or water is a key asset that is being affected by the access to the drinking water. Sunita, over to you.
Thank you, Yasir. Thank you, all colleagues. Actually, as we know, climate change has been affecting all the assets globally, not only water, but water is most affected asset, as we can see. As we know, climate change is affecting in weather patterns, and the weather patterns are bringing erratic rainfall, extreme weather conditions. Somewhere there are so many snowfalls, like no water, no rainfall, the extreme heat waves. So there are several factors. They are directly impacting on water. So if you see, we face more floodings, we face more landslides.
Mohammed Garba, could you continue on that? I believe we have lost Sunita.
Thank you, Ashwin. In terms of how climate change has affected our water globally, I would say we will not talk about water without talking about climate change. To me, the language of water is the language of climate change. Climate change have interactive negative contribution in terms of water shortages globally. If you cite an example of a living community were affected by drought, for instance, you will find out the existing water hardware facilities could not be able to provide necessary water supply for daily activities. If you have a well, if you have a hand pump there, water level drastically drops due to drought, making it difficult for people to access water. What does that cause? It makes people to rely on available sources. Most of these nearby sources available then will be contaminated due to probably with microbial organisms that can cause public health related issues. Or you will find out they are contaminated with some chemicals that are poisonous to the body system, especially among them you have like arsenic acid, lead, chromium, and mercury, which can cause long-term effect. So how do you link up climate change to water supply system? I think when you look at this year, to be precisely, 2020 has been the warmest year in history, with this decade being the hottest year. What does that entail? It shows glaciers are melting. You will have high volume of water in other regions, whereby it poses a lot of flooding system, polluting the water supply system, integrating with waste, and through that system, it becomes so contaminated for human consumption, whereby in some other regions, you find that the issues of drought, because of the hotness of the water, consumption of water increases, whereby the demand increases and you find supply is diminishing. How do you balance that? I think as we plan to celebrate World Water Day tomorrow, we have to look at how do we impact the value of water on people, especially those vulnerable. Who are they? Those are the women, girls, pregnant and lactating women, all people who are residing in remote areas, which is very, very difficult to access. I will cite an example of Sana, for instance. If a decisive action is not taken, Sana will cease to exist due to the acute water shortage that will be observed in those regions. If you come to Nigeria, for instance, we have issues in the northern Borno state of, you can talk of areas like Ran. Climate change is drastically affecting the water supply system in those areas. You find that you drill a borehole that you will get access to water within 60 meters initially. Now with the revising climate change and the asphalt effect is happening, you will have to go above 100 meters for you to get. What does that entail you? It shows there is water shortage everywhere. So I am soliciting that we take a decisive action to find a way. When we are talking about climate change, we have to intervene at how it does and how it interacts with water supply. Every human being is entitled to a potable, clean water for human survival. To cut public health risks, you need effective, clean water for people to drink at all costs. Most of the IDP camps where displaced persons are located currently, you hardly have somebody getting access to 15 liters per person per day, which is really scary. What are we doing in that aspect? How are we going to tackle that? So we have to look at modern ways and more technical input into water production. My colleague George mentioned about utilization of solar system to have water supply. We have to build the capacity of the communities itself. For us to achieve the achievement of having a sustainable development goal of access to water and sanitation by all by 2030, I think people at the community level need to be taught about how to do sustainable approaches to maintain water and how to effectively build resistance in terms of managing weather, climate control, and global warming, as it's directly linked to supply of water. Thank you, Ashley. Over to you.
Yes, can I just add something?
Sure. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so my colleague has actually explained very well the impact of climate change into the accessing water supply system. So the other impact, which I think we also need to look at, is, for example, there are unpredictability in weather pattern. I will just give you an example. I grew up in a village in northern Uganda. When we were growing, our parents would predict that maybe on 15th of Feb, we will get rain, and indeed they will get rain. And they start actually planting around that time, knowing that on that particular day they will get, and indeed they will get rain. But these days, you cannot do that because of the unpredictability of weather pattern. And this has come as a result of what? Of climate change. Secondly, when climate change has effects on, because of either drought or flood, so you can see that when floods happen, it sweeps all the water infrastructure. So the water infrastructure, which should be able to provide clean and safe water supply system, because of flood, because of landslide, because of so many factors, you find this has been destroyed, and even mixing up with the contaminated surface water, other maybe latrine and all that. You find this is poured or this is mixed up and taken back to the ecosystem. And with all the contamination, the pollutants, they end up going into the ecosystem, then it has a direct effect into our water supply system. So that is how much the climate change has affected safe access and supply to water, water in a nutshell. Over to you.
Yasir?
My next question would be, what are the key approaches that we can be taken or adopted to involve communities and in the current response? The question goes to...
I think we can ask Scott.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Scott, could you talk to us a bit about what are some steps communities can take to address safe access to safe water?
I'm again with the question, Ashwin, please.
Yeah, my question was basically, what are some actions communities can take to increase access to safe water? What are some bottom-up approaches?
Okay, so in terms of bottom-up approaches, community firstly need to be involved from the onset of our programming. Hello? So actions that community can take when it comes to bottom-top approach is to actively participate into the WASH programming. Hello, Ashwin?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
So all stakeholders at the community level must be involved into the project activities from the onset. And that will ensure ownership and sustainability. So once the community is involved into the project from the onset, they become a part and parcel of that project. And they don't see it as a project coming from a third party. The experience have shown that if you went to some communities, like for instance, they look at the latrine and say, this is, excuse me to say, this is this NGO latrine, this is this NGO well, because they don't see it as their own, since they were not part of the project design from the beginning. Communities also have to be involved into the siting of projects so that they understand the reasons why this distance must be between the well and the sanitation facility, why this distance must be between the well and the dwelling houses, so that everybody involved will have that sense of belongingness when it comes to the water and sanitation infrastructure at the community level. And like one of my colleagues, Mohammed, spoke about the enabling environment. Once the communities are like involved and policies are in place, people tend to participate fully and they don't see themselves as external actors. The whatever WASH project, whether it is a sanitation facility or a water facility, becomes owned. The community see it as their own facility and not a facility from an external factor. The next thing is communities have to be trained to the operation and maintenance to the WASH infrastructure. And once community is trained to the operation and maintenance of the WASH infrastructure, they ensure that these structures are being maintained so that they provide them the basic services that they are entitled to. However, if we took a top-down approach and come and just, I would say, push projects on community, the end result is to see it as a facility from this organization, this one is from this organization, but we also need to ensure that communities involve everybody, male, female, as well as vulnerable and marginalized people into the WASH project so that sustainability, operation, and maintenance can be assured. One other action community can take is to ensure that they are linked up with other facilities, other institutions that will provide them services that they need to ensure the functionality of the wash infrastructure. For instance, we install hand pumps, we install solar pumps, we leave repair kits, initial repair kits that the communities can use in the event there is a breakdown. So communities now need to be linked up with the suppliers, like George talked about the supply chain when it comes to water and sanitation. Community has to be linked up with that supply chain so that in the event there is a disruption or a breakdown in the system, they know where to access spare parts, they know what to do to ensure that the facility is being repaired. That's also linked to sustainability. Now, to be able to ensure that level of sustainability, there must be a cost recovery program in place to which the community must agree that at this point in time, each household or each family is supposed to provide this for the long-term repair of our water pump or for the long-term repair of our sanitation facilities, so that at the end of the day, they see the project, they see the wash infrastructure as their own, and they don't see it as a free gift that anybody can trample on. Over to Ashwin.
Thank you, Scott, for walking us through the key steps the community can take. Sunita, over to you if you want to add something to it.
Thank you. I think he has covered most of the things. I just wanted to emphasize again on the education on the consumption and lifestyle, because sometimes there is a tendency not to maximize the available water, and most of the I saw that across in Middle East and also in Sudan, the maximization of the water use, the consumption, and also that is maximum integrated use of water is missing. Again, I also mentioned during the climate change adaptation practices, and also for the bottom-up approaches for water sanitation and hygiene, it has to be coming from the communities. As he said, my colleague has clearly stated that the community empowerment, community engagement, there are a couple of approaches we talk about: community-led total sanitation, CHAST, and FAST. So where we engage people to have a dialogue and make their own plan, and they take the decision and their issues, and they find out the solutions. There are also in water sector also, there are multiple practices across the globe. They need to be replicated in the countries where the water is scarce, and there are community level water committees, strengthening them and making them enabling them to repair, to take care of their resources. And also there are a couple of practices done in different countries. The Kashmir harvesting, I have seen in Pakistan also. The mountain harvesting, not only at the house level, making ponds, rainwater. Even in Yemen, they are practicing. Similarly, there are because there are a number of community level interventions they can apply, and they can also advocate for. And there are community level governance, like and partnership. There are private sector who can work with communities as well, enhancing water sanitation and hygiene, like we call sanitation marketing, wash marketing. These kind of approaches, I think, will help community sustain their resources, and also to be more independent for the sustainable wash programming in the communities. Yasir, thank you.
Thank you, Sunita, for walking us through the community side of things. And then, as we have talked about water, its importance, its multiple facets, same time we have talked about the role of the communities. Now I'm going to pose a question to George, to talk about what are the different steps that the governments can take to ensure that the safe access is available to the beneficiaries. Over to you, George.
Yes, Yasir, if I got you well, is the role or what government can do to improve the water supply system. Is that correct? If I got you well?
Yes.
So basically, I will look at the role government can do into three perspectives. So one of the key role that the government can do in order to increase access to wash services is increase in funding.
Yasir, hi Yasir. George, I don't know. Okay, George is there.
Yeah, so basically one of the key aspects which has been lacking in most of the government in LDCs or low middle income countries is that wash services is not among the priority sectors that are allocated resources, because you find most of the government in low middle income countries, their priorities are completely off, and wash is almost the least priority. So when it comes to allocation of budgets into those sectors, wash actually gets very minimal percentage of the national budget, which is already presented annually. So how do we need, so our government or government in low middle countries need to refocus their budgeting to prioritize wash sector as a key sector that needs to get budget allocation to a certain minimum. Actually, I would encourage that there should be a commitment to a certain budget limit to ensure that wash infrastructure or to ensure that funds are available for investment into the wash infrastructure. So secondly, also there should be mechanism put in place by government in low middle income countries to generate revenue internally, because revenue can be generated from the existing facilities through taxes, through tariff, through through water users committees, payment, and all this. So this money, then private sector, involvement of private sector into the water sector would actually generate substantial amount of fund that can be reinvested into the development of wash infrastructure. And in so doing, this would help us increase safe water access and sanitation facilities in these countries. The other area that we need to look at in terms of increasing water access by government in low middle income countries is integration. There is completely a disconnect between the sectors. We know very well that water and sanitation sector cut across different sectors. It cut across health sector, it cut across education sector, it cut across gender, it cut across food security and agriculture. So some of these sectors, so there should be comprehensive integration between this sector during planning, during implementation, monitoring, to ensure that when we are, for example, when we are planning for a water supply system, that means we need to factor in, are there schools that are nearer to where the water supply is so that water is actually delivered to the school? Are there health facilities that are around within the community? So when I'm planning my water supply system, I need to factor in the health facility needs into my design so that water is actually delivered into a health facility. I need to ensure that the health facility or the school have adequate wash infrastructure in terms of sanitation, hand washing facility, latrines, and all this. So these are some of the things integration in the different sectors need to look into, and people need to coordinate. Then the other thing, then coordination even within the wash sector itself, because you find we are implementing a water supply system there, we are not implementing sanitation. So that is lack of integration, a comprehension. So when we are implementing, for example, or when we are developing a project, there should be complete integration, which is water supply, because 80% of the water supplied goes as waste. That means there should be a mechanism to manage the waste that is going to be generated as a result of the supply. So, but in most cases, we only think about the water supply, then sanitation is neglected. Then going back to my colleagues about the sustainability, you find that we are designing water supply system infrastructure, but we are forgetting that hygiene promotion is the most important part of it, to make sure that the facilities that we are going to develop and put in place is actually going to be managed through ensuring that the hygiene promotion components are actually put in place. The community take part in terms of participation of the community. Committees are put in place. Community capacity are built to ensure that they manage the created infrastructure. Then even the community hygiene promotion help us to educate the people even to use the established infrastructure, because we have seen in situation where infrastructure are put in place, but people don't know how to use them. So that's why it is very important to integrate WASH completely within WASH sector, but also with other sector to realize the needed benefit. Then the third aspect that I would also want to put across is the sustainability. So when I talk about sustainability, we are not just talking about sustainability of the facility itself. We are looking at the whole value chain, the sustainability. There should be system in place to make sure that revenue is generated, so that when the WASH infrastructure is in their need for rehabilitation, it can easily be rehabilitated. We need to ensure that the manpower or the capacity of the local community are available, are built to ensure that after, beyond the end of the project, the community are able to manage this project adequately for years after the end of the project. So that is what we are talking about, sustainability. Then we also looking at the involvement of the local government structures within these countries. Sometimes because the project is being implemented by international NGOs or local NGOs, so there's minimal involvement of the local government structures, which are there permanently. The NGOs will come today and go tomorrow, but the local government structures will always be available, and they need to be adequately involved in order to make sure that the water infrastructure are sustainable and can live beyond the life of the project. So these are the things that I look at in terms of government in our in the law, for example, in Africa or even Asia. Government need to look at these three key areas seriously and put more emphasis to ensure that the wash infrastructure are adequately maintained in order to produce the needed water supply to their population. Over to you to the studio.
Hello, Yasir.
Thank you. I also would like to
Hello, Yasir.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sunita.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you, Aswin. I just would like to add what my colleague has said. Actually, there are two factors I think we also need to consider. The international community should also support at the climate risk countries with additional resource allocation. And also, one thing we talked about the private partnership, private sector engagement in WASH sector. It has been proven in many countries where talk about the having partnership with Lifeway or whatever, because it is also sustainable approach. The sanitation marketing, I again wanted to emphasize here. The government should be engaging private sector in water business and entrepreneurs also in making the water sanitation and hygiene sustainable in the countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita, for highlighting the sanitation marketing and other aspects of it. Over to you, Scott. You want to add something?
Hello?
Yes, Scott, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so I just wanted to add a point on the issue of integration that Josh spoke about. I think in third world countries and middle income countries, the WASH sector itself needs to be integrated. I would give an example of Liberia, where I come from, the wash sector itself in Liberia is totally, completely disjointed, disintegrated, because you have the component that has to do with extraction at the Ministry of Lands and Mines. You have the component that has to do with hygiene promotion is at the Ministry of Health, and the component that has to do with sanitation is at the Ministry of Public Works. But that's just one sector. Now, if you look at the wash sector in Sierra Leone, the component that has to do with water is with the Ministry of Water Resources, while the component that has to do with sanitation and environmental health or hygiene promotion is in the Ministry of Health. So you see that the sector is disjointed, is disintegrated. So I think governments, especially in middle income and third world countries, will have to firstly integrate the wash sector, come up with other wash ministries or bureaus or whatever nomenclature they will give them, so that the wash sector can be integrated into itself, so that decision making becomes easier. People can work with community to take concrete actions, and that the wash sector can move as a unit. But if you have a situation where to drill a borehole, like a country in Liberia, you need to get permission from the Ministry of Lands, Mines, and Energy, and then to build a sanitation facility, you need permission from the Ministry of Public Works, and then to do hygiene promotion, you have to work through the Ministry of Health. That's total complete disintegration, which makes implementation of WASH in a country like Liberia very difficult. As a result, the WASH Commission was being set up, but do they still receive that support? Like George said, no funding from the end of the government, and the funding of that unit is totally dependent on international donors and on NGOs and other sectors. And within the WASH sector itself, it has to be integrated. Integrated in the sense that if you look at the three components Mohammed talked about, the enabling environment, hygiene promotion, which has to do with community mobilization, and the hardware component, you observe that even within offices, within WASH teams, that integration needs to be strengthened, because the technicians and technical people think that the hygiene promotion aspect is slow, it's a waste of time, and sometimes they don't regard it. So people go to the field and start to construct WASH infrastructure, while one group is on the other hand doing hygiene promotion. Whereas in my view, we should not behave like coconuts, because coconuts, you drink the water before you eat the fruit, so that if it chokes you, you have absolutely nothing to drink anymore. We should behave like a unit, where the hygiene promotion team would do complete social mobility, community mobilization, to ensure that people understand that this project is coming into this community as a unit, working with local government structures to ensure that we work as a unit, starting with hygiene promotion, community mobilization. And once the community is mobilized and involved into the project, the rest of the component of sustainability, of repairs, and the rest of them falls in place. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. So basically, just to add on what my colleague has said, I think if you go back to the history, where initially initially we were calling the sector as water sun. There was no hygiene. If for some of us who had been long enough in the sector, we were only considering water and sanitation.
That's right.
Yeah, so as time evolved, you find that now in the humanitarian sector, hygiene has completely been integrated in our project, and that's why we have it comprehensively integrated. But when you go back to the government institution, this hygiene component is not yet fully taken up by most of the government in the LDCs. So that's why there's a gap. And you find that there are a lot of investment being put on physical infrastructure, but less is put into the hygiene component, which is to reinforce the benefit that should have been realized from the physical infrastructure. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Scott. I mean, by the level of details you have provided, my mind is blown away. And before I ask my next question, we have a comment. We have a question from a participant. The question is, it's good to listen to all members of this discussion. My question is, why no one talked about rainwater harvesting? I would turn to Yasir.
Thank you, Ashwin, and thank you, Sundar, for asking this very important question. Looking at the time frame and the limitation that we had, water sanitation and hygiene promotion seems to be a very vast subject to cover in 1.5 hours. And yes, talking about the rainwater harvesting is an important aspect that we do tap into. And then we have multiple examples from our multiple countries where we have gone into provision of using the rain to harness the needs of water in schools, in health facilities, and other areas. So it's an important aspect that we have looked into, and we are providing increased access to our beneficiaries through that medium also.
And one more question we have from Alex Adiomi. What are ways we can conserve water on a large scale to increase access to and availability of water? Who would like to take this question?
Thank you. I'm gonna add, and then I'm gonna throw it to the panel team to add to it. Yes, I think conservation of water is very important, and as Mohammed also mentioned about the integrated water resource management. I'm going to go back to our main question of the resources being not definite. We have a limited amount of water being available across the globe, which is only 3% of the water that is available as a sweet. So conservation is an important, and rationing is another way forward. And as we do not look into rationing or the conservation or the integrated water resource management, Sana is going to be the first capital in the world to have no water in the future. Thank you. Panelist, if you want to add something.
Yes, Yasir, to answer the question regarding how to conserve water on a large scale level, I think, yes, that is a very viable question, especially as we celebrate World Water Day. Numerous measures need to be in place to ensure that water is conserved, effective water cycle and usage, and as Scott mentioned about management of available resources, which in terms of this discussion is water. A lot of water has been through waste because ideal recycling processes are not being put in place. You find out a lot of waste consists of water that are just flushed away and they were not recycled. So to answer the question of conserving and ensuring that we have large water stock, I think more technological approach like effective water recycling of waste water that is effective, water harvesting, which Yasir just talked about, is another viable option, and looking at other resources like condensing of water in the atmosphere for people use. Those are key technological areas that I think in the future it will be important to have been sustainable and effective concentration of water for large-scale uses. Thank you.
One more question for you, Mohammed. Very informative. My question is, how can access to water may affect children's education?
This has been discussed over this discussion, we are all aware. If you look at the cultural settings, I will give you a sighting of Africa where I am from. Virtually, children are the one responsible for the household fetching of waters. And in very extreme locations, you find out distance covered by children to go fetch water is really so high. Some people have to walk about kilometers, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 kilometers just to fetch water. And that is a routine activity that they conduct every morning to ensure that household have water before they get ready to school. At this timing to the school hours, a child wakes up 5 o'clock in the morning, he's been pushed to go and fetch water, going into the system, taking 3 hours to fetch water. Definitely he's going to miss virtually all the morning session. And you couple that with the intense stress that activity has put on the child. So when you correlate all these issues, you find out it exposes the child to sexual exploitation as well. Performance will be back in school, and you will find out the child productivity is generally low. So water supply, and I can say effective water delivery, is paramount to ensure that children have basic livelihood of living, because water is life and provision of this really. We have seen across the globe where the stress level of children is very high. My colleagues have been around the world and they have been implementing wash activity for a long period of time. I think in terms of having access to water close to houses, it will really improve in educational level globally and reduce the stress water poses on children. Thank you as well.
Sure. Over to you, Sunita.
Thank you, Aswin. Thank you for a very beautiful question. Actually, I would like to also link this with the protection issue. There are a number of studies conducted globally why the girls are dropped out from the schools. I would like to link with sanitation in a school. Was in schools, most of the community was aspects my colleague has already covered. Let me take you through a number of issues that we have been hearing, seeing in the schools. Most of the time, girls at around teenage, while their menstruation has started, they start dropping the schools. And myself, I did some research around this in multiple countries, and they mentioned that main reason they are dropped out are there are no sanitation facilities to change the sanitary pad. There is no sanitary pad available in the schools. There is no water available in the school to wash the hands. Sometimes the toilets in the schools have no doors, no locks, so they feel insecure to use the toilets. So these are the very pertinent factors. The girls' education is dropped. Girls' education is also impacting. Similarly, as my colleague has stated in the past, in the communities also there are a number of violence against women and girls, while the water points are not safe, especially in the settings in the camp, where the schools are located in isolation or the latrines are far from the school, or while they are using bush for the defecation or urination, they are subjected to be violated, mostly the girls. So this is what I would like to add. Thank you.
Maybe just to add something to Sunita, just to link it up, the last point she has put on. You see, when girls are exposed because of long distance to collect water, that means they are vulnerable to sexual gender-based violence, and which may lead into pregnancy. So you find a girl who is supposed to be a school-going age girl will get pregnant, and this girl will drop out of school. So that is the effect of access, limited or lack of access to water supply, and that is how it affects directly a girl child education. Over to you.
Exactly. I also would like to add in here the mental state of women and girls, because sometimes I interviewed a number of women in the camps while I was working in Yemen, and also in Pakistan, and also in Turkey for the Syria response. The women, they mentioned that they don't wanted to go to the latrines, and they control the urine and stool for whole night because they are dark, and they were also having the secondary infections, some of the gynecological infections, the urine infections they reported. Similarly, the women, they said that there are multiple others things that, like, women were not consulted while they were doing the water points. The girls were not consulted while they are constructing the toilet in the latrines, as in the schools. Even the female teachers, they were complaining about the site of the latrines, the lock, and the all other accessories like sanitary napkins. Sometimes the girls were embarrassed to dispose their sanitary napkins in the schools, especially in the camp setting where the schools were within the camps. So these are the factors we also need to consider while we talk about water and sanitation plus hygiene in schools. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Yasir. Hi, Ashwin.
Yes, Theodore.
So this is why, in my view, we need to encourage a lot of advocacy around increase in access to water, so that we graduate from the system of hand pumps to putting into place small water system at community levels, so that houses can have direct access to the water, which means the children will not get up 5 o'clock a.m. to go fetch water. They will not be violated. They will not stay in queue for more than 1 hour, and they will have sufficient time to go over their lessons, study their lessons, and go to school freely. So this is where, as a sector, we need to put in enough time for advocacy and with donor agencies, advocacy with government agencies, so that we increase access by installing small water system at community level with the community management team to ensure that water leaves that whatever tower it is to the household, so that family can have access directly, and that will limit the children having to walk for kilometers to access water. Over.
Yeah, I think just to add on, maybe just to add one last point, is that the other effect of lack of access to wash services to girl child or women in general, in situations, research has proved this, that in situations where there's lack of wash services, women or girls prefer to delay going to ease themselves during the day, and actually they go out at night, and in so doing this, they actually expose themselves to, they become vulnerable to sexual gender-based violence, or since sometimes they go at night to open field defecation site. That's when men who have target them during those visits, has a direct impact to a girl child or women in general. Over to you, Aswan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, George and Scott. As these experts are talking, you can recognize how serious is WASH and how different people face challenges when it comes to accessing safe water. Platforms like this, Public Health in Real Life, have been created to create awareness, educate people, and also celebrate these unsung heroes who are working day in and day out to address these public health issues. Scott, I would like to go to you. I would like to go just to everyone, if you can just say in 2 or 3 sentences maximum, what got you passionate into WASH? Scott?
Thank you, Ashwin.
Sure.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Ashwin. Firstly, as a young man coming out of school, grade school, my ambition was to be a politician and a lawyer, because my dream was to be Chief Justice of this nation. Unfortunately, there were crises and we had to move into refugee camps. And
this is Liberia, right?
This is Liberia. So as a result of the Civil War, we went into refugee camp, and I found myself working in the field of water, sanitation, and hygiene since 1994 December, and I got interested into the field, so I followed everything to the letter, and I've worked with so many NGOs. So that led me to abandon my quest of being a lawyer and a politician, so that I could be Chief Justice, to being, like I always refer to myself, as a water and sanitation, in the water and sanitation field, as a cleaner, ensuring that people have access to safe drinking water, people have access to clean sanitation infrastructures, and people have access to hygiene promotion, so that we improve the quality of life. And that has become my passion over the years. Thank you.
Over to you, Mohammed Garba. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Ashwin. For me, my passion for water developed when I was a little boy. Growing up in my primary school, I wanted to be a footballer, a professional footballer in life. We happen to have a hand pump in the school facility. As we are playing football, children normally sit on it, and we hit it a lot of times. Most of the times, the hand pump get broken, and the principal have to say, okay, you children, you are responsible for breaking the hand pump, so you will be responsible for repairing, like a joke. So when she called for repair, she asked us to go to the site and see how it's being repaired. And one of the man repairing it is the technicians around the community. So he fixed, trying to fix the chain. He said, "Mohammed, fix the chain." And suddenly he gave me a screw, tied up the chain, and we pump and water started pumping out. And I felt so relieved that yes, I was part of the team who fixed the hand pumps in the school. I think the reputation preceded me, and now here I am being an expert in wash and serving people in need. Thank you.
Inspiring. Thank you. Sunita?
Hi, everyone. For me, why I moved to the wash sector, actually, I grew in a village where we had the water scarcity. Actually, I was the village girl carrying the water, walking for an hour. Like it has given me a kind of how to say desperation that okay, one day I will also be the activist or something that I can contribute to the sector. And I got an opportunity working in Oxfam. So then I choose to be a WAS expert. I also had public health background. So I choose to be an actor to contribute to the sector through advocacy, through my technical expertise. And also, interestingly, I also have changed my stream from the public health, and now I even if I'm now in a management position, but I still advocate for WAS because I had that childhood experience with the deprived water and sanitation while I was in the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita. George?
Yes, this is very interesting question. So basically, me, when I was growing up in a small village in northern Uganda, my dream was to be an engineer. And because I was good at math, because maths was like the foundation for engineering. So as I grew up, unfortunately, I grew up in the amidst of we were only boys. And that means you cannot forego collecting water, you cannot forego cooking. So that kind of motivated me. So when I reached senior high school, I remember one of our teachers told me that if you want to be an engineer, then you need to take math seriously. So from that time, my focus was like I need to be an engineer, and I was like taking math seriously. It reached a level when I was even in Uganda. We have after O level, or what we could say junior, then you go to A level. They even baptized me because by the name that I'm Omara Pem. Everybody would call me Pem because of every time I was on doing maths throughout and all that. So when I sat my A level, which was now the next step to join the university, I was not given engineering. Instead, I was given Bachelor of Economics and Statistics at the university. But because I had that dream of being an engineer, even when they gave me a course to do at the university, I refused. I actually told guys, I'm not going to do this course on government, even if it's on government. I'm going to do my civil engineering. Then that's when I requested that. I went into Ministry of Education. I told them, give me an engineering course at a diploma level. Then they actually gave me that diploma in water. Fortunately enough, at that time, this was the only college in Uganda which was producing water engineers. And it was producing water engineers at the diploma level, not even at the degree. At that time, there was no degree in water engineering. So basically, it was a polytechnic. So when I did my diploma, fortunately enough, I did a diploma in water engineering. And in 2003, when we had IDPs and Southern Sudanese refugees which was living in northern Uganda. So then the LRA strike the IDP camp and the refugee camp, so the refugees came. So it just got me armed with my diploma. And that is how my journey of being a WASH expert started in 2003. up to now. So then I started with my diploma confidently. Then I kept on. Then I worked in a refugee camp, which is now the largest refugee camp in the world, which is Bidi refugee camp. So we worked there with the refugees. Actually, my first assignment after graduating, I had to manage 10,000 refugees which have just been put in one location. I have to make sure that they have water supply. So that is how now I developed the passion to make sure that I develop a career but also a passion in WASH up to now. So along the way, I went and upgraded, got a bachelor in civil engineering. Then I got now my master's in water and environmental management from WEDEX, that is Water Engineering and Development Center. So that's how the journey started. And by the way, I started as a wash assistant. So from wash assistant, I just grew up within the wash system up to the level that I've reached. And now I am happy that I am living my dream. Over to you.
Thank you so much, George. I am honored and privileged to call you all my colleagues at International Medical Corps, and I would like to turn to Yasir also to answer this question. But also, if you could please wrap up this program. Yasir is our HQ advisor for WASH, and if you can just provide us a quick answer your question about your childhood experiences and wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwin. And I think it's very interesting to hear the very interesting stories from others. Mine is a bit different. When I was in the engineering school, I had a cousin who was like 16-year-old, and he got into the health facility and he died within 2 to 3 days. And when I was with him, caring for him, I kind of like looked into the reasons, because he went with a very small disease to the health facility and somehow he ended up having something else which took his life. So that was the day and turning point for me to look into how I can work towards limiting the environmental hazards at the health facility level, and how I can be an instrument that this tragic event does not happen to other young children. So that is how I got into washing in WASH overall, and then my passion currently with washing in health facilities while I'm working with International Medical Corps. That is our core sector where we are looking into providing healthcare WASH management. So that was my question. Sorry, rest of the participants or panel people had very joyful stories. Mine was a bit sad one. Same time, I'm gonna quickly wrap up the discussion that we had for the last 1 hour and 43 minutes. So Sunita talked about expanding and connecting us to the SDGs. Then she even talked about general gender equality. Without water, no life, is a very key instrumental statement coming from her. Scott walked us through our commitment to the delivery of the healthcare, expanding on the water needs in specific to Ebola and cholera responses. George put an importance into water, into nutrition, and how we are missing out the key element of 51% children not in the school. Same time, Muhammad talked about who are affected, and we are affected, and that's the key punch, and I'm really loving it, and I think we should be promoting that as a tagline for this discussion also. Key commitments to the effects, sustainability, and then there was a general discussion which triggered out of the whole situation was talking about the neglected people often, and good to hear a couple of countries examples who are denied the basic access to wash, and then that is a challenge that we as humanitarians have to solve and go there and be the boots on the ground. Key aspects of how the current pandemic is reacting and how we are coping into the different challenges. Same time, it is very interesting for us, like when we were doing face-to-face community meetings, and now we have moved into a bit more a remote management style of things and adopting to new normals. That is a new thing that we are looking into, and ensuring that our staff on ground and staff in general and the community cadres are kept safe at all time. Then we talked about the key wash assets affected by the climate change, and that created a lot of discussion, and then going into how the resources are managed, how sustainability is brought in, and the conservation side of things. Bit more bit more discussion on the role of the communities into the wash management. That is the important aspect that we are trying to promote overall, and looking into how wash systems ideally can be managed by the community. And we are trying to play a catalyst role through international medical core programming in our communities and healthcare facilities. Same time, then we moved on and dissected the question with a different dynamic of government roles through how the government should be plugging into the whole aspect. And interestingly, George talked about funding, integration, and sustainability. And I just wanted to add one more thing, which should be clearing and creating the leverage of policy making, so that we can ensure that we have certain policies or strategy at the national level are available, which looks into the governance of water, sanitation, and hygiene promotion aspects, which is mainly in many of our countries is missing. We talked about the rainwater harvesting, and thank you to Sundar for bringing that one up. The key where I wanted to finish the whole discussion about the wrapping up, the thing is that schoolgirls drop out. And same time, I just wanted to talk a bit more about the access to safe water is an essential component to fight, to reduce cases of waterborne diseases. Without clean water, people throughout the world are suffering from cases of infectious diseases that are often proven to be fatal. Sometimes, as we are all coming from a privileged background, clean water is right there when we turn on the tap. But often, when we look into the background of it, the tap water is a couple of hours away from many of the people that have to travel longer distances from 5 to 10 kilometers or 8 hours of one-way walking, and bringing in unsafe water that contributes to the overwhelmed healthcare system. And then how IMC, and just to wrap the whole thing, our IMC
International Medical Corps,
International Medical Corps wash teams and the wash sector around the world are working to close these life-saving gaps and to meet the daily demands of the people that we are serving. And the interesting thing would be that one day I was completing a water project where we were drilling a borehole, and then the water came out of we were doing a pump test, which is a basic requisite to ensure that we commission the borehole. The community people did not understand that why are we wasting that water which is coming out to be through the pump test. And they were running to their households, and they could grab cups, glasses, any utensils they could find so that they can save that water, not understanding that within few hours times they will have a bit more improved access to water at all times. Back to you, Ashwin. Thank you very much for giving the WASH team the chance to talk about and highlight the key challenges and how we are doing with the water sanitation and hygiene promotion in public health emergencies, and to celebrate the World Water Day together. Thank you.
Yeah, as you heard our International Medical Corps colleagues speak about the World Water Day, you would have seen the level of commitment they have. And in fact, Yasir is raising WASH activist. So we have a quick video from Yasir's daughter that we would like to share as part of this this interview.
WASH practitioners, I'm Eliyeen Yasir, a 7-year-old young WASH activist, and I want to say Happy World Water Day to everybody in the world. Let's continue to save water for the future generations, and don't forget to wash your hands. Bye!
Thank you so much, Eliyeen. That was a beautiful video and a wonderful message. It's a perfect way to conclude our show today, and it's a call for action. It's a awareness program, and I would like to thank all my International Medical Corps colleagues here who have been lending their busy time for us to educate everyone and celebrate this World Water Day 2021. Thank you once again to all panelists. Thank you to the audience for asking inquisitive questions. Be safe, everyone, and we will talk soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Happy World Water Day.
Happy World Water Day.
Happy World Water Day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.